Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming. This is the March 22nd Verona Public Schools Board of Education meeting. We're calling the meeting to order and it is 7:08. And if everybody will please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The reading of the meeting notice. This meeting is being conducted in compliance with the open meeting session that the Verona Board of Education passed a resolution at its annual reorganization meeting held on January 4th, 2022. The meeting set forth the schedule of its regular meetings, which resolution was within 7 days of passage. The schedule was sent to the Verona Cedar Grove Times, the Star Ledger, the Township of Verona, and the VEA. Posting of this meeting, setting forth the time, location, and agenda were posted at the Verona Board of Education office and on the Verona Public Schools District website. The Verona Board of Education operates under a consent agenda format. Any board member has the right to have an item pulled to be voted upon or discussed separately. Copies of tonight's agenda and resolutions have been made available to the public and the press. Mr. Cruz, can you please do the roll call?
Mr. Walker. For the record, Mr. Walker is absent. Mr. Day.
Here.
Mrs. Drappi.
Here.
Mrs. Prisco.
Here.
Mrs. Fresky.
Here.
We have quorum. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we're going to start off with Dr. Fernari and the superintendent's report.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I want to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Cruz for his diligence in overseeing the development of the 22-23 preliminary budget for the Verona Public Schools. As you will see from the presentation, there is a great deal of detail in this budget that was gathered with the help of many others in the district. Thank you to the entire administrative team, the Board of Education Finance Committee, and to the board as a whole for their collaboration and support during this process. I hope you've all heard already about this, but this year's One Verona, One Book initiative is off to a great start. This year's book is Toys Go Out by Emily Jenkins, and I know that a few of us around the table have a copy with us this evening. Our elementary school library program is once again fostering the love of reading through this initiative. Thank you to Detective Joel Martin for his wonderful video contribution introducing Toys Go Out to our families. Thanks also to the Verona Education Association for providing the books for this wonderful initiative, and to all those who are providing the read aloud videos for our children and families to view. And don't forget, say thank you to your school librarians for all they do. Next, in order to further clarify where we are with next steps in our diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative, I'd like to share the following. The Board of Education will be provided with a motion to retain the services of Grand River Solutions, as I had mentioned previously, at our next meeting. In line with the modified proposal, Ms. Jody Shipper, co-founder of Grand River Solutions, would lead the work provided by the firm should they be appointed. Among her many experiences and credentials, Ms. Shipper has in her career served as the director of the Office of Equity and Diversity at the University of Southern California, has experience as a senior employment law associate, and has done extensive work with Title IX. Ms. Shipper will, if approved, be working with us both on site and virtually as needs dictate. The role of the consultant is to help us by gathering qualitative and quantitative data regarding HR practices, as well as climate and culture data that will be analyzed. They will then make suggestions, recommendations to the district, and the DEI committee, Board of Education, and subgroups will discuss those. Tasks that will be implemented will come out of these discussions. The district has been working on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives for several years. It is a best practice for organizations to be reflective of current practice and to adjust based on feedback. Similar to our independent fiscal audits, the district's special education review of services, New Jersey CUSAC reviews, strategic planning initiatives, and federal and state monitoring, This process utilizes an independent entity to help us to find what is working and what work may still need to be done. I have reviewed a number of questions about the makeup of the DEI committee and how it functions, so I thought I'd provide you some of that information as well. The DEI committee is an integral group of administrators that is led by Dr. Miller in his capacity as DEI coordinator. DEI facilitators are Mr. Freund, Mr. Gobblecheck, Mrs. Peter, and Mr. Stevenson. They work closely with Dr. Miller and with me in order to support the schools. We also have approximately 100 volunteers who are members of the 6 DEI subgroups that I described in my presentation given on December 7th, 2021. Half of these participants are members of the public, our parents, and community members. The rest of the participants are school district administrators and staff. We are holding meetings with the subgroups next week. And that concludes my superintendent's report for the evening. Board members, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Dr. Fenari. Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Fenari?
We didn't, you said next week, so are we going to announce the meeting date?
Yeah, so Dr. Miller, we have the 29th, 30th, and 31st, correct?
No, I thought the board meeting is
For
going
a
to be
special
on,
meeting?
Oh, that's different. That's a different date, so a different meeting. So,
Yeah, so that's not on here. Are we adding that onto here?
oh, yes.
Yeah, all right, so what we're talking about is, I'm gonna go a little out of order here. So we were able to get a contract approved by the county for a new superintendent, and that we need to fit in a special meeting. So we are gonna have an additional meeting on Monday, March 28th. And now, if there's no other questions for Dr. Fenari, we're going to roll into Mr. Cruz and the business administrator report and his preliminary budget.
Thank you. So I'm going to actually share my screen. I'm not sure if you guys are able to see that. Okay, sure. Is that? Yep. Okay.
All set?
So thank you. I'm actually going to ask Dr. Fenari to join me in this presentation tonight. So this is the preliminary budget for 2022-23. And I'll actually start with some of the pieces that we covered the last time in our presentation, which is the budget timeline. Right now, we're in the month of March. So as you can see that this is where the board actually adopts the preliminary budget to be proposed to the county, the state of New Jersey. What happens with the budget is that the state actually reviews it. There might be some changes and some suggestions that is actually offered by the county superintendent and the county BA before the board gets it back, and then we come on April 26th to do the final public presentation for the adopted budget. And that's actually the next step to that. And then again, the cycle continues for the next fiscal year in the same budget timeline. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Fenari for the next slide.
So on this slide, you'll see that the district mission statement, and there are some key words here that are really important to keep in mind. Many of them are attributes that we hope to support for our students, being creative, being critical thinkers, and compassionate global citizens. We also want to make sure that the curriculum is meaningful and we provide enriching experiences. So you'll find during this budget presentation that the budget is extremely student-centered. It addresses the goals and also provides new opportunities for students, which some of these we will present at a higher level at this point. And when the revision comes back from the county office and we've gotten the county approval, we will be more specific with some more of that information. And also we want to make sure that you are aware that this budget supports some very important initiatives that we feel strongly will benefit our students. The budgetary goals are on the next slide. There we go. Okay. So our budgetary goals include maintaining class size within our policy guideline, making sure that we provide some additional programming for students, as I just mentioned. So there will be some staffing adjustments to support program enhancements in both general and special education, in the arts and athletics. We're also supporting and continuing to support social emotional learning within this budget, and increasing the capacity for substitutes and lunch aids. And we're trying to do that as fiscally responsibly as possible, staying within the 2% cap, plus the amount of banked cap that Mr. Cruz will mention in a slide later in the presentation.
So in this slide, we actually see the increase in our revenue for 22-23. The first increase is the 2% on our tax levy, which equals $712,683. The bank cap, which is a 0.82%, is an additional $294,555. And our state aid, it was an increase for this new budget year of a total of $568,926. Going back to the bank cap, just so folks are aware, this is not funds that we have sitting in the bank. This is funds that's available to the board that was untaxed levy from two years prior. So that's actually an additional revenue stream that is available to incorporate into this budget for 22-23. So the total increase in revenue for this budget year is $1,576,167. In this slide, you'll see a comparison between the 2021-22, which is our current adopted budget, which we're currently finishing the school year in, and then the budgeted year of 22-23. The change in our tax levy, you'll see the dollar amount in that 1 year change, and then the percentage amount. The next row after tax levy is the bank cap on a separate line, just so you can see the difference. State aid, we went from 2.2 million to 2.8. So there's a significant increase in state aid for this new school year of 24.79%. Our tuition revenue, we're estimating an increase of 5%. And then miscellaneous revenues, which is the interest and also the rental of our space, et cetera, we're estimating a bigger increase there of 38.6%. The next row there is the budgeted fund balance. So here, I'm not sure if you guys remember from our audit for the June 30th, 2021 audit, we had a significant surplus. A big portion of that surplus is part of our fund balance, which is that $912,938. That was brought into this budget as additional revenue for this year. And regarding our capital reserves and our maintenance reserves, we're not withdrawing anything from the reserves amount. So at the moment, we have over $1 million in reserves, in capital reserve, and 250 in our maintenance reserve. And that's going to remain untouched for this budget year. So in total, the budget, it's $40,577,236.
Okay, so this next slide is intended to demonstrate where the different portions of the budget are allocated. In this pie chart, if you look to the right-hand side of the pie chart, you're going to see that general education instruction, special education instruction, and special education tuition basically make up half of the budget. And that's just about 49.5% of the budget, actually, of the overall expenditures. The next largest portion of the budget is allocated toward benefits. I believe, Mr. Cruz, there was a 6 or a 6.2. What was the percentage increase this year for the health benefits that we budgeted? 6.2, okay. So there was a 6.2% increase to the health benefits, and that makes up 14.8% of the budget. And the other categories are much smaller categories within the budget for things like custodial services, school administration, athletics, and there are some ancillary expenditures for special education that didn't fall into the tuition or the regular program special education costs on the other side of the slide. This next slide gives you a picture of a very similar picture with dollar amounts allocated in instead of percentages. So you'll see that, for example, the salary section, there's $13,254,706 allocated there. Special education is a $9,491,000 allocation, and you can see where the rest of those budget areas fall and how they correlate to that previous pie chart.
So on this slide, you'll have the comparison of your expenditures between the current 2021-22 year and the budgeted year. So in salaries, we see an increase of 5.8%. Benefits, as Dr. Fenari mentioned, is 6.6%. Special ed is an increase of 5.5%. And we have our general services in instruction. That's going up by 15%, and also supports is another 15%. To that comparison, the expenditure budget is actually the same as our revenue. So we actually don't budget anything extra as a surplus. It's basically a zero-based budget.
Okay, the next three slides that you're going to see break the budget priorities and initiatives into elementary, middle, and high school. So you'll see some repetition. The general gist of this is that in all three levels, we are providing professional development, supplies and materials for students. There are some specific things that I'll point out in a minute. There's also curriculum writing that goes on in all levels. The initiatives that are on these three slides, for the most part, you've already heard about when the the Education and Special Education Committee has given their reports. Many of these things have already been brought up. Some things of note at the elementary level, for example, there's implementation of a new social studies series, K4. You've heard, I'm sure, a lot about the MAP growth assessments and the correlation of that to Edmentum Exact Path. And the initiatives that we've already been working on with science, social studies, math, and language arts are being enhanced as well. At the middle school, similarly, there are professional development initiatives. Most importantly, of note that's different, and you heard about it at our last meeting, that the exploration of the new social studies series for grade 5 and the implementation of the new civics curriculum and the new cycle course in grade 7. You're also going to see there that the MAP growth and the Edmentum are part of that, as are curriculum writing in a variety of subject areas. At the high school, which is the next slide, again, professional development. We're also looking to explore inquiry-based learning in social studies through the humanities department and through the curriculum and instruction and assessment department, professional development, and the continued support of mathematics and STEM, and also curriculum writing in a number of courses, number of AP courses, and some of the other offerings as well. Okay, now this is a chart that demonstrates some of the things that are going into this budget with regard to special services. The first column is program continuity. So these are things that are already in place that we are continuing to grow and enhance. The center column is additional services, things like speech, language, counseling, OT, and PT. There's also effective school solutions is built into this area, and making sure that all of the services also have the proper supplies and instructional materials that they need. The initiatives that are built into the budget for special services include adaptive electives and specials for high school and the middle school, mental health and wellness certification, maintenance of certification, and additional staff based on department needs, and also registered behavioral technicians for the LSS program.
So here we have our comp districts. This data is actually from 2020. The state has not updated the 2021 data. So at this time, in order to compare apples to apples, this is actually what you have currently for this year. Our per pupil cost is about 16,000. So as soon as that comp data chart is available, hopefully for the April 26th presentation, I'll have 2021, which will give you something a little more current. So here we have a breakdown of the tax levy increase. So the first line, we have our general fund, 35.3 million currently, and in the new 22-23 year, it's 36.6 million is an increase of 1.2 million. Debt service is actually going down as times goes on. That more is going into principal interest is actually going down. So the difference there is actually it's going down by $38,000. So the actual net impact on the increase is 1.2. But there's actually some good news. So the good news is that there was a second question. I'm not sure if you are all familiar with November 2018. There was a second question for an additional $765,000 for mental health and early childhood full day kindergarten. So that was an additional $765,000 that was approved by residents through that second question election day vote. Because of clerical issues between the school district and the township at the time, that was not collected until this current fiscal year. So technically, right now, the increase that where we are now, as of this fiscal year to the new fiscal year, that increase is only going to be 504,964, and then that service is still it's going down by that change of 38,382. So for the new fiscal year, our tax levy is only going to go in, the increase is only going to be 466,582. So what that means to the average homeowner, the impact on the average homeowner is only $93,000 tax increase, and that this is basically the township value. Our budget tax levy for 22, the rate, the average home, and the average school tax on the average home here in Verona. So a summary of what we went over, it's in general, the tax levy increase is a total of 2.83% from our general operating fund from this current school year. The impact is only going to be that $93 per household on the average home of $431,700, and then the average school tax paid by the residents last year was $7,305. The rate is going to be 1.69. And lastly, the next steps for the board is submitting this preliminary budget to the county superintendent next Monday, and the board is going to hold their public hearing on April 26th for the final approval of the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz. The April 26th meeting, is that the one that's going to be at HBW?
Yes.
So, yeah, so people might want to note that the April 26th public adoption of the budget, that hearing is going to be held at HBW. There was a conflict in space, so we're not going to be able to be here, and that will be pushed out. Does anybody have questions?
I just had a couple comments for Mr. Cruz. Thank you very much for the presentation. I guess on the good news front, the state gave us a nice little bump in state aid, which was very helpful for our budgeting. I was also very happy to see, a lot of things we're doing with the growth in curriculum. I mean, that's critical, and that's why we're here for the students and to continue to grow that curriculum. I was also happy to see that we're keeping ourselves in the ballpark with our comparable districts when it comes to the dollars, so how we're very efficient with our dollars, and we're always on the lower end. And make sure, Mr. Cruz came on board to be the CFO of the district, and then you're watching every dollar, and Dr. Fenari's keeping, the dollars in line too. I know you're
Absolutely.
very good at that. And then at the end of the day, I'm a taxpayer like everybody else in this town. And the $93 tax increase is, for years, it's been higher than that. That's pretty good considering all the numbers that we've been playing around with. $93 increase. I mean, increase is an increase, but $93 is, one of the better years that I've seen for our budgeting. So,
Thank you.
so thank you for your presentation.
Yes, of course, I have questions. Thank you, Mr. Cruz. Thank you for the comprehensive budget outlook. I always learn something new every year that we go through this process, so thank you very much. But I do have a couple questions. But before I ask my questions, I want to say how thrilled I am to see that we are including our adaptive electives into next year's budget. I think that's critical, and I know it shows that, we're listening and we hear what, parents are asking for their children need, and we're able to do that within this budget, I think is just wonderful. So I think all of these initiatives are really great. I guess a concern that I have is sustainability. For next year's budget, because we have this wonderful surplus, and I know with careful budgeting, we can continue to have a nice surplus year to year to year, and that's the goal. I guess it's less of a question, more of just a concern that I wanted to put out to the board, is that my concern is that we have these wonderful initiatives. I just want to make sure that we can sustain them, over the course of time. It would be a shame to have to cut programs that we introduce, going forward because of budgetary constraints. I guess the question I have regarding health benefits, I know that's always, I guess for lack of a better term, point of contention, right? Because they're never going down in price. But am I wrong in saying that we have to go out to bid for that? And is that an annual thing, or is that every 3 years?
No, it's annually. So
Okay.
we do have private insurance through AmeriHealth. And I guess that is something that is a huge cost. And I think at the point of, I guess, collective bargaining negotiations, that's something that we should always actually put on the table as far as like an option of where we could actually reduce costs. But unfortunately, where we are, that's kind of like health benefits has always been something that is going to continue going up. And we are always going to look for, a better option to cut costs. So right now, our broker, Brown & Brown, is currently in the process of going out and bidding and seeing if AmeriHealth is still the most competitive provider out there for the same for the same type, equal or better of the health plan that we have available. And going to your questions regarding sustainability, so that's something that we have that right at the front seat, because it's something that we want to kind of like build in. Is one of my goals that I share with our admin staff is that I want to actually ensure that we continue building that surplus, because we're this surplus that we actually ended up with from last fiscal year. Is a crucial part of ensuring that all of our program and services that are going directly to our students is being actually served. So in order to create that sustainability, we always need to actually look at that surplus as something that we want to continue building towards. And so for example, one of the things that we did is that we're limiting purchasing at this point of the year. So purchasing is only being allowed for end of year services or student activities. So at this point of the year, there shouldn't be brand new curriculums being purchased. There shouldn't be materials that additional computers. The computers should have been brought in the summer for use and at the start of the school year, not at the end, towards the end of spring to actually use it for next year by the time that those orders come in. So things like that is actually going to it's going to help generate that surplus for the next fiscal year in order to continue funding those programs and those services that we want to ensure that we're creating that sustainability.
Great, thanks for
Yeah.
that explanation.
You're welcome.
Regarding the health benefits, though, also, am I right in my understanding that they are outside of that 2% cap? So the 2% cap is for anything within our general fund outside of those health benefits. So that's why when the public sees or we see that budget presentation is over 2%, part of that is that those health benefits.
So yeah, the state allows waivers for above the 2%, and health benefits is one. Enrollment is another. So those are the two biggest waiver areas that the school board actually has the flexibility to go beyond the 2% whenever the cost for health or enrollment actually goes up. That is the option there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just to clarify too, that $93 increase is just for what our tax increase will be for school increase, not like overall taxes. I don't want
Correct.
anybody
The school
thinking that
tax portion. That
that's
correct.
all their taxes are going up. Okay.
So the school tax portion, and I believe the township in my conversation, and don't quote me on this, I think it's also going to be similar to
Okay.
that. So yeah.
And then lastly, that per pupil spending, right, is something that we've prided ourselves on often. Every year we look at our budget and we look at how can we, that's a sign of efficiency, right? That we are able to be an extremely high performing district that's always looking to improve, that's always looking to put the tools in the hands of our students at the lowest possible cost to the taxpayers. Can you just explain quickly, you don't have to go into tremendous detail, but like what is per pupil spending? What does that look like for a student?
So the per pupil spending is every single cost that goes into direct student instruction. So that's your salaries for your teacher that's in front of the classroom, the building administrator, the principals, assistant principals, guidance counselors, all the additional supportive services that are there for that student is part of that per pupil cost. And in addition to that is anything that goes into the technology, the school-based budgeting that's actually at that school. And that's something that over the years, Verona has done. So for the last 2 years, we've moved into a site-based budgeting, allowing our building administrators to kind of like have a little more autonomy over managing the way that they're actually ordering their supplies, as opposed to asking the district office, hey, can I buy this? They're able to make their own decision and assess what's needed, and then also be part of the budget development, be part of that budget build to kind of say, like, this is what I would like to incorporate with their vision, along with the superintendent and myself.
Thank you.
I just had a real quick question too. In regard to some of our revenue, and it was coming out of space rentals. And I think it was a question at one point during the pandemic, the Saturday school that used to rent from us, we couldn't do that during pandemic. Is that something that we've reached out to, that we might be able to get back on the books?
Yes. So we did, I believe it was the Chinese school.
Yes, correct.
So that's something that we are putting on for September. So now that we're hopefully, have the pandemic behind and in our rearview mirror already. So it's something that we could actually look forward towards to generate additional revenue with space rental and our use of our facilities and our fields. So that's something that that we definitely are going to look forward to generating that revenue for.
Perfect. Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions? Mrs. Prisco? No. So Mr. Jorge, thank you very much for that presentation. And we do have a second presentation this evening, and that's by Ms. Charlene Peterson, and she is our New Jersey School Boards Association, and she does training for us as board members. And the topic this evening is part of mandatory training, its roles and responsibilities and ethics. So welcome, Ms. Peterson. Thank you for coming to our meeting.
It is my pleasure, and thank you to the board for taking some time out of your meeting to have training. We're finding that that's one of the things that is helping make a difference in boards, keeping that foundational work current and continuing with your training. So as we start undergoing challenges and find things before us, we find that those boards that are the strongest are the ones that continue their training and do that work. So I appreciate your board taking the time to continue that work. So instead, I'm going to take you through ethics and roles, and just want to, I guess, reiterate that ethics is not a legal presentation, that the board would always follow the advice of its board attorney. Just here to share some information from the School Ethics Commission. So, and again, from the board's perspective, please feel free to jump in at any time or ask questions at any time. I just wanted to start out talking about really what our overall responsibility as board members. But a lot of times, because of the time we put in and the work that's involved in being a board member, we often refer to ourselves as volunteers. But really, we need to think about ourselves differently in the work that we do, that we are elected public officials. And with that comes responsibility. We have responsibility to the people that elected us, that we need to hold their respect and confidence, and then are held to a standard of making sure that we avoid conduct that's in violation of the public trust. And then it takes it even a step further and said conduct that even could create a justifiable impression among the public that such trust is being violated. So that then is the basis of the School Ethics Act and what our responsibilities are, the standard that we are held to as board members and as elected public officials. So having said that, there are some components to the School Ethics Act, and also, this is how we are held accountable. We had mentioned CUSAC as being that state monitoring. So this then is also part of it, and you can see that, there are points associated with us as a board, making sure that we are in compliance with all of our ethical requirements. Whoops. So as part of the school, oops, I'm not sure what's happening here. So as part of the School Ethics Act, like I said, there are different pieces of it. We're going to look at the School Ethics Commission, who is the body that provides oversight. I know a lot of times people think that that's part of what New Jersey School Boards does, but we're actually a training and advocacy organization looking at what constitutes conflicts of interest, going through the Code of Ethics. And we all just recently had to fill out disclosure statements, and then also looking at our mandatory training requirements. So, one of the things that we don't always realize as board members is that we are the most highly trained public officials in the state. We're the only public officials that have mandatory training. And in addition to that mandatory training, also have a lot of other ample training opportunities available to us. And I know that this board is very good, and the members, about taking advantage of that training. So just kind of wanted to quickly go through what the mandatory training requirements are. And it's for board members in your first 3 years of board service. In each one of those years, you need to take training provided by New Jersey School Boards. So the first year is just kind of an overall training about, new board member orientation. The second year is governance 2, and that goes through finance and kind of negotiations, labor relations type things. The third year is student achievement. And then every time you are reelected in the year following your reelection, you need to take governance 4. So it doesn't matter. I've had board members who've been on the board 20 years and say, do I really need to take this again? And the answer is yes, every time following your reelection. So it is legal update. So it is something that will always be different. So I had mentioned then that the School Ethics Commission is the body that does provide the oversight of ethics issues. So they are a 9-member board, kind of appointed by the governor for a 3-year term. That was interesting that the majority, 5 of them, are non-school officials. It's 2 school board members and then 2 school administrators to make up the 9. And then also that there's no more than 5 from any one political party. So keep bumping this with my hand. So the work of the School Ethics Commission is basically to do two things. One of them would be to issue advisory opinions. So what that means is if you as a school official are not sure if something might constitute either a conflict of interest or a violation of the Code of Ethics, that you can ask the School Ethics Commission for an opinion. How would they rule on that? What would they consider it? A good example is that there was a board not that long ago that had a high school senior elected to their board, still in high school. So before the person was even seated, their other board members had questions, what's going to happen if we have to talk about this person's friends or their teachers or classes that they're in, and thought of all, kind of potential conflicts that might exist. So asked the School Ethics Commission for an advisory opinion, and they basically came back and said, that we wouldn't treat this person any differently than we would any of you, that whatever would be a conflict for you as a board member would also be a conflict for this person. But, just the point being of you can ask a question ahead of time about something and only a school official can do that. Then separately from that would be ethics complaints. So that would be if it's perceived that there was a violation of ethics, then anyone can file an ethics complaint, be it another board member, be it a staff, a member of the public. The only, I guess, kind of body that cannot file a complaint is the board of a whole cannot, individual board members can, but the board itself as a body cannot. So should an ethics complaint be filed, and what potential violations there would be? And I guess it's also important to say that the School Ethics Commission just makes recommendations of the penalty, and then it's up to the Commissioner of Education to actually decide and implement the penalty. So the least restrictive penalty is a reprimand, which is basically, it's kind of like a verbal hand slap of an acknowledgement that yes, something, what was done incorrectly. A little more formal than that is a censure. And in that case, there is a resolution that's read both at the state. It's also read at your local board meeting and in the places where you mentioned in your open public meeting statement about where you post your meeting notices. That resolution would need to be posted there as well. Board members can be suspended, and that's typically for a length of time, usually a number of months, and then you can be removed from the board. So just wanted to share a little insight in terms of the kind of the work and the cases that came before the School Ethics Commission in this past year. So we can see, the advisory opinions that were requested. And then if the School Ethics Commission feels that the rest of us would perhaps benefit from that, those opinions, they take the identifying information out and can make them public. So up until, like, if I had done this presentation maybe a month ago, there would have been a 0 in terms of the advisory opinions that they made public. And then just about a month or so ago, they made like 8 of them public from, dated from last year, so that we now have that information to learn from. When we look at mandatory training, we see that, and I have to say that the first time I saw this, I was surprised that members can be removed from not doing your mandatory training. So as much as we sometimes think, that it's as much as its requirement, just wanted to kind of demonstrate that the School Ethics Commission takes it seriously if we don't fulfill that requirement. The same would be true with the disclosure statements. And then as we look at the school ethics violations that were filed, and we see that there were 29 filed, and we see that most of them, 21 of them, were dismissed. And a lot of times it's not because that perhaps there wasn't any wrongdoing, but when the person filed the charges did not file the evidence that would be necessary for the School Ethics Commission to consider. So this is one of those advisory opinions that was just recently released from last year. So just wanted to share it because it provides an example or uses the wording that talks about that justifiable impression. So here's a situation where there's a board member that owns an accounting firm that they started after they were elected to the board. As it turns out, even though they didn't go out of their way to solicit any district employees, one of the district employees did become one of their clients. So now the question was, if there is an issue with you as a board member having someone, who is a district staff, one of your clients. So the School Ethics Commission came back and said that, yes, we consider, the potential for families, for other staff to be, your clients. So yes, we would, and said that it could leave a justifiable impression that the public trust is being violated. So just again, wanted to share how that the state does use that example. So we're now into the code of ethics. And so one of the things that is differentiated here is that some of the things, as we talk about conflicts of interest and other things, it applies to both administrators and board members. The code of ethics, this piece of it, applies only to board members, and we are held accountable to it all of the time. I know sometimes I had a board member say, sometimes I feel like I have a hand tied behind my back, and said, well, in a way you do. But again, that goes back to your responsibility that comes with being an elected public official and you being accountable to the code of ethics here. So as we look at the slide, in the green box is the actual tenet of the code of ethics. And then underneath that, just for informational purposes, are the standards that the School Ethics Commission uses in determining whether a violation took place. So someone would file something that they thought, and then they would apply it to that standard. So usually I have the board members here tonight go around and we'll read each one take turns reading each one of the green boxes, stop after each one, and then just quickly talk about it. So is that okay to do that tonight then? So you want to go ahead and get started then, Lisa?
So I'm going to read what's in the shaded area.
Yes.
So I will uphold and enforce all laws, rules, and regulations of the State Board of Education and court orders pertaining to schools. Desired changes shall be brought about only through legal and ethical procedures.
Great. So this is kind of help, kind of solidifying the fact that as the board, we're kind of the state's boots on the ground, that as mandates come through, as executive orders come through, as standards come through and things that need to be implemented at the local level. This is what holds us as a board accountable to that. And, I have to say, prior to the last couple of years, we sometimes have had a hard time finding an example of what this might look like, or, how we are held accountable to this, but we can, see all the situations and difficult decisions that were placed before boards this year, that this is part of what held them accountable to carrying those things out. Okay, so I want to read B.
I will make decisions in terms of the educational welfare of children and will seek to develop and maintain public schools that meet the individual needs of all children, regardless of their ability, race, creed, sex, or social standings.
Great, thank you. And you read it exactly the right way of emphasizing all children, because I think that's, what makes a big difference sitting on that side of the board table, that, you may have people who have concerns or, talk to you about, say, a particular school, a particular grade, a particular situation. And as you are considering that, you need to look at things through the lens of, how is this impacting every student in the Verona Public Schools? Because that's who I'm responsible for. So as you make decisions, that is the lens that you need to, look at things and consider things.
I will confine my board action to policy making, planning, and appraisal, and I will help to frame policies and plans only after the board has consulted those who will be affected by them.
Great. So now the state is starting to help define our role. It's telling us, okay, board, that this is what you do. This is the lane that you're in. You're a policymaking body. You're involved in planning. As we just saw, part of the budget presentation tonight, and then the appraisal of the evaluation of the superintendent, the appraisal of how effectively we're using our resources, your work as a board, and then importantly saying, that we need to consult those who will be affected by them. So typically as a board, when we have new policies that we're considering, we always will have a second read. So that first read then puts the policy out there, and then that allows the opportunity for anyone else to come back to the board and say, okay, board, just so you know, this is how this situation impacts me. So that then as a board, before you do that second reading, you now can take that into consideration. Okay.
I will carry out my responsibility not to administer the schools, but together with my fellow board members to see that they are run well,
And
so well run.
And that is pretty much New Jersey School Board's mantra, right? For those of you that, take our training, we always say it's not our job to run the schools, but to make sure that they're well run. So again, continuing to kind of help define that role and making sure that we understand that difference. And then importantly, that saying together with my fellow board members. So as much as we are elected as individuals, we know then that the way we make a difference is when we are here seated at this board table with our fellow board members, that we know as individuals, we have no more authority than anyone else, any member of the public, anyone else. Whoops, sorry. It's only when you're here together with your fellow board members that you are able to help make a positive difference, for your students. Okay, guess we're going around again, right?
I will recognize that authority rests with the Board of Education and will make no personal promises nor take any private action that may compromise the board.
So again, talking about our responsibility, that each one of us is responsible for the integrity of the board, responsible for the work that the board is doing, the conduct of the board, making this a better board, and holding us accountable as individuals, that we can't do anything to kind of harm that body, that we are here to help the board do its work.
I will refuse to surrender my independent judgment to special interest or partisan political groups, or to use the schools for personal gain or for the gain of friends.
Great. So to me, this goes back again to the one you read before about all children, and saying that, sometimes regardless of why you got on the board, if you feel like you were beholden to certain groups, or you felt like there were certain parts of the community that, supported you, saying that once you get on this side of the board table, the group that you are responsible for are the students, no other group, that you are here to help, advance student achievement.
I got the long one.
You do.
I will hold confidential all matters pertaining to the schools which, if disclosed, would needlessly injure individuals or the schools. In all other matters, I will provide accurate information and, in concert with my fellow board members, interpret to the staff the aspirations of the community for its school.
Good job. So, we know as a board that we're a public body. We do our work in public, but there are times that the state has identified 9 different reasons that we can go into executive session to have discussions. And it's typically to protect the rights of our students, to protect the rights of our staff, the legal rights of the district. So those are the things that as board members that we are asked to hold confidential. And this is what holds us accountable to that. And then from that, also the piece about the accurate information. One of the things that the School Ethics Commission has said is that because board members, that you have access to so much information, that there is a greater weight placed on what you say if you are saying something about the schools. So saying then that this is what holds you accountable to that recognition of that greater weight, by holding you accountable to only portraying accurate information. Okay.
Letter H. I hope we're not going to Z, Charlene. Just want to make sure.
We're almost with J.
Okay,
J
okay,
is
just checking. I will vote to appoint the best qualified personnel available after consideration of the recommendation of the Chief Administrative Officer.
Great, thank you. So this helps clarify the role. Sometimes there is a perception that the board hires, the board fires. This was clarifying the fact that the recommendation comes from the Chief Administrative Officer, and the board can either approve or disapprove that recommendation. And the state even goes so far as to say if you were to disapprove, it can't be for arbitrary and capricious reasons. So there is a recognition that your district has a hiring process in place, and that when the superintendent is bringing a hire before the board, that process has been followed. And so, like, again, the board is just considering that recommendation. Okay.
I will support and protect school personnel in proper performance of their duties.
This is something that we're seeing kind of coming more and more with social media, and basically saying that as board members, we have to support the school personnel, not only while you're sitting here at the board table, but, also all the time. One of the ethics cases from last year was a board member who had a blog, and for whatever reason on his blog, like to go after one of the teachers and, kind of questioned her salary, questioned why she got tenure, would just continue to make negative comments about a staff member. So again, recognizing that we are held accountable to this all the time. Okay.
I will refer all complaints to the chief officer, and will act on the complaints in public meetings only after failure of administrative solutions. Sorry.
So from the board's perspective, so this is kind of, I guess we kind of say that this makes the board be like the court of last resort, that basically saying that, this is what holds the board accountable to not getting involved until after a failure of an administrative solution. So as much as people may be stopping you or in a grocery store or somewhere and, making you aware of a situation and thinking, okay, board member, I'm just going to go right to the top. I'm going to go to you and have you help and fix my problem. This is basically what's holding us accountable to saying that we can't do that. That's not our role. What we know better than anyone else is we know the chain of command. We can help them, refer them to the person closest to the situation to allow them to get the help that they need. And so again, making it clear then till after failure of an administrative solution. So even sometimes people may come to the board meeting thinking that they are going to get a solution right here, when again have not gone through the chain of command. So this then is what holds us accountable to that. Just wanted to go through some of those cases from last year where someone was found to be in violation of the code of ethics. And so just going to go through them quickly. So this was a situation where a board president, was not at a board meeting, was at a booster club meeting, and threatened a coach and said that did it same thing the year before. So in this case, in the little letter in parentheses, so those are the A through J that we read. So it's saying which tenet of the code of ethics the person violated. So in this case, it was not, supporting school personnel in the proper performance of their duties. And this board member was suspended for 3 months. Here's a situation where a board member had a relative that worked in the district, so they knew that they were, had to recuse themselves from pretty much everything that had to do with the superintendent. But in this case, the superintendent had a merit goal, and the board was just voting to say, yes, you did all everything you needed to do for this goal. So this board member voted on it. And so someone filed ethics charges and basically said, because you have a relative, you shouldn't have voted. And the board member tried to say, well, it passed 6-0. It only needed 4 votes to pass. So at the end of the day, did my vote really make a difference? And the School Ethics Commission, if you can see in the red where I kind of bolded or changed the font and color, of basically saying that even in seemingly ministerial matters, the level of conduct expected of public officials must be beyond reproach. So again, we're, getting kind of, some more directive about what is expected of us as board members. Here's a situation where a board member did some volunteer work for a church. At the end of the year, the church so kindly paid him a $2,000 honorarium for that work. The church wanted to use the school facilities for something. So this board member made the resolution asking if it would be okay for the church to use the facilities and voted yes. So it came back and said because there was some money involved, that they would consider that to be a conflict of interest. The next one is a little bit interesting in that a board member, again, helping us understand what our responsibilities are as board members. So here a board member distributed flyers for political party. And in the flyer, it said that the board member ended the flyer with their picture, their name, said they were a member of the Board of Education, but didn't put the disclaimer. We know, that as board members, we don't lose our First Amendment rights. But one of the things that the School Ethics Commission said is that we have to put a disclaimer in our posts and things that we do, saying that, yes, I am a board member, but I don't speak on behalf of the board. I'm not authorized to speak on behalf of the board. And these are, my own words. So basically the School Ethics Commission came back and said, because you did not use that disclaimer, that we, can see that you violated E of taking private action that might impact the board. You violated F of, kind of surrendering that independent judgment. And then in this case, G said because said the complaint was the leader of a radical group, that there was nothing that would indicate that that was the case. So that was not accurate information. So this board member, their penalty was censure. Here's one that was kind of unique or different about this one is there was a sitting board member who endorsed people that were a slate of candidates running for the board. Use the disclaimer. Again, saying that it was his own personal opinion, but the state came back and said, you know what, you weren't convincing, that just using the disclaimer is no longer enough. So that's the first time we've ever really seen that then of them saying that, in your posts or in what you were saying, you made references to while I was on the board or talking about things that happened at the board. So it's no longer enough to just put some words on a piece of paper that, are saying that's a disclaimer, that you actually, that your actions have to support it. The next one then is a board member who made some offensive comments. So again, even though they used the disclaimer, said that, the comments were such that it would make it difficult for the public to have, trust in the board. So this person was actually, their term was up, they weren't running again. So said the worst that we could give you in this case then was a censure. So this is language that the School Ethics Commission provided for board members to use that disclaimer in social media or other posts. And again, kind of with the caveat is making sure that your actions have to support it. So just as kind of introducing the next piece of it, we're going to now look at conflicts of interest. So just as a way to kind of introduce it, saying, okay, if there was a board resolution to approve the hiring of an auditing firm that you work for, could you participate in the vote? So we know that the answer to that would be no, right? That we would have to recuse ourselves if there's any benefit or a perceived benefit to you as a school official or to your immediate family. And the very last box on the bottom is the state's definition of your immediate family, which is a spouse or dependent child residing in the same household. And said if there's any business interest, any financial involvement, if you were using, the one we see the most is the second bullet of using the position to secure unwarranted privileges, advantages, or employment. And then the state also extended the definition beyond that immediate family. It puts the words others in there so that if there is some kind of a privilege or perceived privilege or advantage that doesn't fit that definition, then they'll use other. So we looked at immediate family, but then this is the state's definition of a relative. So we can see that it's a bigger, broader definition. I think we've determined the only relative that's missing is your cousin, that everyone else is pretty much there. And it's whether it's you or whether the person is related to your spouse or partner. So again, in looking at that, if the district had an opening for a position, it would be a perfect job for your nephew who lives 2 towns away. Could you hire your nephew? And we're going to look and see that we can't. And then this one was I guess we already answered looking at the example of the board's meeting to discuss the superintendent's performance evaluation. Your daughter's a substitute in the district. Can you participate? And this one ended up being a little bit of a tricky question without even trying, because there are some districts where the substitute is an employee of the district, and there are other districts where the substitutes are contracted from an outside service. So if they were contracted from an outside service, you perhaps could be able to participate. So again, as we look at hiring or the personnel restrictions from the board's perspective, as of 2008, a board can't hire a relative of a board member or of the superintendent. And if you get on the board, or if a superintendent is hired and the relative already works here, the administrator can't exercise direct authority. As a board member, you can't take part in any employment matters regarding the superintendent, so you can't evaluate the superintendent. Your district just went through a superintendent search. You wouldn't be able to have participated in that. So just kind of keeping in mind those restrictions. So now let's look at kind of what conflicts there could be with negotiations. So in this case, if the board was voting to approve the memorandum of agreement with the local education association, and you're a teacher in another district, can you participate in the vote? So the answer to that would be actually that you can, but you would not be able to participate until the memorandum of agreement was done, the salary guides were done, everything was completely done, and we're at the very last step now of voting. So that would apply to you as the board member or that immediate family member. If you have a relative that works in the district, you cannot participate at all. And then in that bigger, broader definition of a relative, which most people have a relative that's a teacher somewhere in New Jersey, right? I'm saying that absent any other conflicts, that you would both be able to participate in the negotiations process and vote. That other conflict may be if they said if that relative has heightened union involvement, like if they were the building rep. Another conflict for you as a board member may be in some campaigns, the local teachers association may contribute money toward your campaign. Should that be the case, you may have to sit out from negotiations for at least a year. So one of the other things that we have gotten some guidance from on the School Ethics Commission, which would seem would be a logical thing that we would do as board members, is volunteering. And so kind of the guidance that we've received is that in order for us to kind of maintain that viewpoint that we have as a board member, kind of that 30,000-foot view of the district, it would be challenging for you to do that if you were in the building all the time, if you were an active presence enmeshed in the building, said if you had responsibility over any district funds for anything, if you were supervising district staff. I mean, there was a board member whose wife worked in the district, and the wife ran the school plays. So this board member used to help his wife with the plays. So if you think about all the time you spend with the students while the play is going on, and they had a budget and other kind of other responsibilities, that's kind of what first started this. So the School Ethics Commission, said, well, we don't want to deter you from volunteering completely, but these are some things we think would be okay. We think it would be fine if you came in and read on Dr. Seuss Day, or we think it would be fine if you chaperone field trips. And then also distinguish that there may be times when you are part of another organization, say maybe the rec department, and you use the school's fields or the school's gym, saying it's okay for you to be a volunteer coach for the rec department, but it would not be okay for you to be a volunteer coach for the school district. So just kind of making that distinction. So that was all that I had from the ethics piece of it. I was going to go into the roles now. I don't know if anyone had any questions before we leave ethics, and we'll kind of see that the two intertwine a little bit. So we'll move forward then with the roles. Okay. So just wanted to start out from a board, recognizing as we look at what our roles and what our responsibilities are, recognizing that it first starts out from the state and, the legislator and the statutes and kind of passing that along to the commissioner and the State Board of Ed, and then kind of passing that along on the local level to us as a board. Our state is, finds it really important that you're able to maintain local control as much as possible. So, recognizing that, you have the ability to make and pass policies here at the local level. But again, it starts with that authority from the state. So recognizing then that is our work at the local level. Again, making sure that we go back to that all students and saying that every action we take should be focused on what's best for students. And then recognizing that we are representing the community, but making the distinction that it's the entire community. So we are here, sometimes we may hear from certain factions, different factions, people that we don't hear from at all, people that, sometimes feel like they're not represented, but recognize that your responsibility is to all of the community. One of the kind of a general rule of thumb is that only 20% of the community has students in your school and the other 80% do not. But you as a board are responsible for the whole 100%. So. Just so as we look at our roles, just kind of have some different words, some different thoughts to kind of help distinguish our role from that of the administration. So again, looking at governance, the work that we do, saying it comes from the Greek word to steer a ship. So we think about governance as steering. So we're not in that boat, that's management's job. So we're helping set the direction through the policies, through the goals. And again, another way to look at it is kind of a board taking that high level view of saying that board looks at things through a telescope. The administration would look at things more closely through the lens of a microscope. And then sometimes it just comes down to two words. From the board's perspective, we are responsible for the what needs to be accomplished, what direction do we need to go in, and not the how. So anytime we start getting in conversations about the how we're going to implement something, how we're going to do something, we need to recognize then that is most likely not our role, that we are the what, and that our administration is the how. So another way to kind of help think about our role as we look at it, even again through kind of a picture standpoint of saying, if you think about that role of, or that different viewpoint of when you're on the dance floor, you're there on the dance floor with your partner, you've got the steps, you're listening to the music, you're aware of the other people on the dance floor. That's a completely different kind of feeling and sight from when you are standing up on the balcony and you're looking down from the balcony at the dance floor. Here you can see different patterns. You can see what happens when the music speeds up, slows down, kind of what's happening from a different viewpoint. So from the board's perspective, that is the viewpoint that we are taking. We are not on the dance floor giving our best moves, right? We're up there on the balcony looking down at what is going on in the district, and that then is the viewpoint that we should be doing our work from. So this going through New Jersey School Board's one and only joke of saying how many board members does it take to screw in a light bulb? Again, continuing with that same vein of saying none, that it's up to the board to say the what. Let there be light, up to the superintendent to decide the how, what that's going to look like, and then making sure that the board has the resources needed to do that, and then evaluating. We've already talked about, saying that the role of the board is not to run the schools, but to see that they're well run. So just continuing to emphasize that point. So what specifically are our roles then? So basically, as a board, we have 4 functions, that we talked about the fact we're that policy-making body. So that's kind of what sets the guidelines for our administration to run the district. We're involved in planning, so setting those clear expectations for success. We saw your mission statement tonight, so it's kind of operating on that bigger level. Is where, again, the board would get involved. Oversight and appraisal, we looked at that a little bit earlier, and then providing for two-way communication, making sure then, that that the community can be heard, making sure that there's opportunities to both inform the community and to be informed by the community. So while the board may not be doing a lot of that outreach, the board needs to make sure that those opportunities exist. So I already talked about the fact that as an individual board member, we have no more rights than any other member of the public. So this is just reinforcing that. So also saying as a board, essentially kind of recognizing the fact that we are elected as individuals and that we need to make a conscious choice as a group to say that we are going to govern in alignment with our superintendent and our administration in a way that is a cohesive team working toward the fulfillment of that mission statement, the fulfillment of our goals, as opposed to a collection of individuals, each with our own agenda going in different directions. If we, kind of recognize that that common vision or that end is advancing student achievement, we can see how we can make a difference if we are all working together with the same priorities in alignment. So just again, as a summary of those 4 functions, we said it was policy, planning, oversight and appraisal, and the two-way communication, recognizing the board is the what, the administration is the how. We work together as a team and the importance of communication. So we talked about the board's role, so just kind of wanted to quickly summarize what the superintendent's role would be in relation to the board. So if we said that the board was the policy-making body, that the superintendent then is kind of the implementer of, again, the how. So breaking that down into 3 different parts, saying that the chief advisor to the board, usually on your agendas, you'll say upon recommendation of the superintendent, and kind of pass the different resolutions, recognizing that the board has, uses or considers the expertise of your superintendent before taking action. If we say that we are not supposed to run the schools, but we need, if we're not going to be in the schools, we need to be informed. So again, holding that as part of the superintendent's responsibilities to make sure that the board has the information it needs. And then if we are making the policies, we need them to be implemented. So that would be the superintendent's responsibility to do that. We also need to know whether they're effective or not. So the staff would communicate to the superintendent, who would then communicate back to the board and say either this is working for us or this isn't working for us, so that as a board you can take the action you need to do. The superintendent being the executive officer, kind of the person who runs the district. And then also importantly, that the superintendent is the educational leader for the whole Verona community. So that is the person then that your community should look to for educational expertise and guidance. So just kind of summarizing those roles from the board's perspective, we would respect the superintendent as the consultant. We would recognize the superintendent as the community's educational leader. Again, not confuse our policy role with that of running the schools, and no surprises. So if we know that there are situations brewing or things going on that, making sure to maintain that trusting relationship, that we make the superintendent aware of things that we know of because of our connections in the community. But then on the flip side, we would ask the same thing from the superintendent, that from the board's perspective, that we not be surprised either. We're responsible for casting informed votes. So ideally, there would not be situations that appear on the board agenda or things that we're asked to vote on that perhaps we haven't had the information we need. So kind of making sure that we're both working together to keep one another informed. The superintendent's recognizing the board as the authority, that the board is the superintendent's implementing the policies, and like I said, keeping the board informed. So just kind of had some questions here, some thoughts about as we look at our roles, and didn't know if any one of these spoke to you as a board that you wanted to comment on, or how it works in your district, or saying the difference between oversight and micromanagement. Again, that difference between seeing the schools are well run and administering the schools, and the difference between supporting the superintendent and being a rubber stamp. So didn't know if there's any thoughts or anything anyone wanted to comment on as you think about, reflect on your governance work and how this, comes into play in your work?
No, I think sometimes with the last one, supporting the superintendent and being a rubber stamp, I think that gets lost sometime because we do operate as a board of committees. So a lot of times, to use the term, we're in the back room making the sausage. Some of those harder conversations happen out of the public eye. And then it comes and it looks, it's a perception of a rubber stamp. And how do you combat that? To get that across that, it's not like there's a lot of deliberation and conversations that do go on before something is voted upon.
Well, I think the important part of that is the fact that committees, when boards use committees, it's with the understanding that committees can only make recommendations. So when the committee brings forth its recommendation, then that's then when the board should be having its discussion then in public to either talk about those recommendations, to support the recommendations, to ask any questions, so that the public's rights are impacted when the board votes and when the board makes decisions. So the public needs to know what the board has considered when the board is making its recommendations. So that's typically why you would have committee reports and things to kind of help inform about what was discussed. But what's important is what's discussed at the board meeting, because that is where the decisions are made, as opposed to in a committee, only recommendations can be presented to the board for board discussion.
I think to that point, I mean, it's something we're always trying to improve upon. I think sometimes what happens, and this is not an excuse, this is just a reflection on my part. I can't speak for the whole board. Did I say it right? Must be the whole board. That I feel like specifically education committee reports are exhaustive, not exhausting, exhaustive, Dr. Miller. And I feel like sometimes when we're reporting that out, I'm just trying to get it out and put it on the table and open that up for discussion. But I think our committee reports simultaneously do a good job of connecting to policies, strategic goals, and resolutions. So, the information is there, but I think as a board, we can do a better job of discussing it, whether it's, oh, I really like what you said here, or I support this, or I have a question about that. I agree. I think that's something we can always improve upon.
Add regarding oversight, one of the things that I was thinking about since I've been on the board was I came on the board and one of my actually neighbors had mentioned, oh yeah, you're going to be hiring the teachers and the curriculum and all these things. I'm like, I'm in technology sales. You don't want to have me hiring the teachers and doing the curriculum. And that's why as a board member, our most important role is to have the best CEO we can get, which is our superintendent. And they, get involved in the curriculum with the staff and the administration and the principals and the teachers, right? So that's to make sure people understand the board does not do the day-to-day operations. And it always rolls back to us. The questions come to us, and we want to make sure that's what, you follow that, where you go when you have a question, you go to your teacher, you go to the supervisor, go to the principals. And we're happy to help anyone we can. But again, we're not the experts, and that's why we have the superintendent and the administration, who are the experts in curriculum and students and staffs.
Great, thank you. So just again, summarizing, the importance of the board and the superintendent working together for our, overall objective to advance student achievement. So just kind of wanted to, again, kind of, go through a couple tips of, making sure that, and I think you just said it, perfectly, of saying that, your hat you're wearing on this board is not the educational expert, that you're here to do governance work, and that you hire people to do that. We talked about the importance of no surprises. Again, to make clear, from the board's perspective, the board only has one employee, and that's the superintendent. And then all of the other employees in the district report to the superintendent. So we, again, respect that chain of command of everything going through the superintendent. And then importantly, need to make sure from the board's perspective that we respect the fact that as individuals, we can't direct the work of the superintendent. So if we think that there is some information that we think would be helpful or something that we think that should be considered, I guess one of the things we say at New Jersey School Boards is you always get your say, but you don't always get your way. So you are able to bring something up for board consideration, but it needs to have the majority of the board agree that that is a direction that the board would like to go in before then, then directing the work of the superintendent, that it would be the board majority that's directing that work and not me as an individual board member. Again, we talked about confidentiality. Just wanted to say something about the careless and negative remarks carrying a greater weight. And one of the things we don't always realize either is sometimes the way that we say things. I was at a board meeting one time where a board member was criticizing a program that had been in place for a while, and at the end, public comments, one of the staff members got up and said, like, this is my job, like I'm offended by this, like I do this every day, and I put so much love into the work I do for your students, so to hear you say that is hurtful. So sometimes we have to think as board members, how can we get our point across in a way that is, more productive as opposed to being negative, and recognizing, again, that greater weight. And then to me, importantly, leading by example and making sure that we are exhibiting behavior that we would like for our students to model. A lot of this I've talked about already, but again, that the one employee, making sure we don't go outside the chain of command. If we're not sure if something's the board role or a staff role, and we are paying somebody to do this, that's your first clue then that's not the board's work. So the last piece here I have kind of to wrap it all up these are some scenarios from the New York School Board gave us, so that in case we don't want to ever go into a district and use examples of New Jersey districts, right? So just to kind of look at a couple situations here, just to kind of tie it together and see what you think, whether this would be oversight or overstepping. So here's a situation where there was a board member who's a CPA, identified some line items in the budget, thought that could yield some savings, put a report together and shared it at the next board meeting. Would we consider that to be oversight or overstepping?
Stepping.
So what could he or what could that person have done?
I think that person could, within a committee meeting, talk about savings and different strategies that might go forward, and allow the business administrator to jump to the conclusion of line items.
Perfect.
Let us know if we overstep.
Were you worried there for a minute? How about, here's a situation where the high school principal updates the board at a meeting on the school's remote learning plan. A member asked the principal how the plan is addressing the school's widening racial and socioeconomic academic gap. So, I mean, here we know that, obviously the person's coming to the board meeting because the superintendent asked them to, right, to do a presentation to the board. So, I mean, what would be your thought then?
I feel like it could be oversight because it's not an unreasonable question, but I think it falls under that category of like no surprises. You knew this person was coming to report on this. That is a question that could have been presented to, the superintendent prior to the meeting, and then that discussion should have been had in public. That's.
No, you're right in both cases. I mean, it is questions that board members, would be asking. So from, you're right from that perspective. Here is a situation where a board member thought that the district had not been proactive in responding to a recent decline in enrollment, contacted the superintendent and wanted a detailed report to be created and shared with the board. So again, similar to what we just talked about, if we look at the first three words up there, which is
I would say that's oversight.
Well, it could be, except where it says a board member, right? So is probably oversight to bring it up to the rest of the board and
Buzz, I lost.
and say, yes, I'm concerned about this, think that this is something that the board would be, could be interested in. And so again, just wanted to make that distinction. This one here, the district's planning a capital project to put in a turf field. There's a member who believes that this poses serious health risks and then uses social media to say, negative things of saying, don't be fooled or misled by this. So again, it could be kind of that independent action, right? That might compromise the board, although, somebody did ask me and another board said, well, what about my First Amendment rights? So we do recognize we don't lose that as a board member as long as we're exercising them within the confines of the Code of Ethics. So I believe that was it. Unless anyone had any questions for me or.
Questions? Anybody?
I had one thing that you brought up about collective bargaining. I know it was under the ethics component, but one of the things that I'm not sure the public's aware of, with collective bargaining, only certain individuals can participate on the board. In one of the cases, we had 2 teachers on our board. And when it came to negotiating contract with the teachers union, they could not participate. So I don't know if there's something you wanted to elaborate on or provide some more clarity about the collective bargaining process.
Sure. So it kind of goes back to that, that example that, had provided saying that if you as a board member, or even if a member of your immediate, who meets that definition of an immediate family, again, goes back to that no perceived advantages, recognizing that if you belong to, the state says, a same or similar union, statewide union, that you would have to recuse yourself. So the thought process is that once the negotiations is completely done, the memorandum of agreements done, the salary guides are done, you can no longer kind of help kind of sway what that outcome's going to, what that output's going to look like. So saying that you can't be involved at any point up until this is completely done, again, because of that potential, conflict or any potential advantage. So as a board member in that situation, you don't come into the, into this until it's time for the final vote. So.
Gotcha. Thank you for clarification. I just want to add, I want to thank you for your presentation.
Oh,
First
it's
of
my
all,
pleasure.
That's great when you come up here. I know you come up here periodically, and New Jersey School Board does a great job for the state and for our district. I used to enjoy going to the county meetings and learning some good things every time. But now that we're out of COVID, hopefully we get back to that. But again, I want to thank you for coming up. Again, New Jersey School Boards, you guys have been great. So
Thank you.
Excellent, Ms. Peterson. I'm going to echo what Jim said. Thank you so much. It's very helpful. It's things that we know, we should know, but always great to have a refresher and keep it front of mind. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's my pleasure, everyone. Good night.
Have a good night. Okay, so thank you, everybody, for listening to our training on that. And we are going to move on with our agenda, and we have committee reports. And the only committee I believe was finance. And I'm kind of thinking we're going to bounce it back to Mr. Cruz.
All right, so on our finance committee, we had a few items that we covered. One of the items was a comprehensive review of the budget, which you guys all saw a presentation on earlier. The other item is resolution number 10, which is E-rate. So E-rate is part of a government service under the FCC. It's actually called, the entity is called Universal Services Administrative Company. And what it provides is reimbursement up to 90% of telecommunication services Verona is technically, we're able to get 20 to 40% because our Title I or free and reduced lunch population is a little over 1%. We actually ended up benefiting from the 40% reimbursement. So right now, our free and reduced student population is 1.12%. So what that equals to is about $12,000. Our broadband expense is a little over $30,000, so it's 40% of that expense. There is additional documentation and some bureaucratic paperwork behind that. So that's where this E-rate consultant comes in at a maximum expense of $2,400 for the year. So that's the cap of the most that we will pay out. It's their rate is $175 an hour, up to the maximum of that $2,400, which outweighs the benefit of actually having a consultant come in and actually process that application and ensuring that we actually get the reimbursement outweighs the benefit that we get from E-rate. So that is my recommendation to the board.
What's the time frame on that? When we be able to reap the benefits of that reduced cost?
So the application process is actually right now. So I believe today was the deadline. So the E-rate consultant already started with that. So as soon as the application process gets submitted and is under review, we could actually submit our expenditures for the year and get reimbursed for that. So that's usually a few months. I would say like an additional 3 months, we will probably see the benefit from the reimbursement.
Glad to see we're getting under the deadline.
Yeah,
We better vote on it tonight, otherwise we're in trouble. So, okay, good.
exactly.
Thanks
Yeah.
for the clarification.
The other item on finance committee was utility costs. So one of the things that we are looking at is always looking at reducing costs. As I mentioned in the last meeting, Dr. Fernari and I, one of our biggest pieces is actually always looking at our administrative overhead and expenditures that are and where we could actually find cost savings that we could actually move that into direct instruction to our students. So utility, as you all know, it's been going up and up. So this is one area that we are looking at bidding. So for the resolution and the addendum tonight, that's resolutions 7 through 9. You'll see there a few resolutions for the bidding of utilities. So one of them is on fixed utility rates, and then the gas rates as well. So this is not a resolution to go into a contract. This is only for the opportunity to go out to bid and see if there are favorable rates that will give us better rates than what we're paying right now with PSE&G. So it's basically third-party providers that go and bid out. And if the rates come back favorable, that's something that will come back to the board for board resolution and approval to get into a contract. And what that contract looks like, it could be a 12-month contract or 18-month contract where we'll lock in and actually see some cost savings compared to where we're paying right now. Then the other item on finance committee was copy leases. We are looking at proposals from our existing copy lease provider. So it's currently a 60-month proposal, and then we're looking at another provider to see if we could get a better and comparing apples to apples to make sure that we're actually providing our teachers and staff the same and comparable copiers and services through that. And then
I just have to say, you got to love Mr. Cruz, because I've been here for doing this board for a while. I've never seen copier lease renewal review. So, I mean, he's watching every penny in our district, because
absolutely.
You're probably going to count the pieces of paper that go into the copier, but no, I do appreciate you that, because that is
That's coming at the next board meeting.
Okay, got it. So, okay.
We'll start counting the paper clips to make sure.
Okay. Yeah. So
the other update that I wanted to take the opportunity to provide is last meeting we spoke about the electric bus. So I don't actually want you guys to go and bombard that inbox. I did speak to the NJ DEP. They are all set. I think that the amount They really only wanted kind of like endorsements from like the committees and organizations. They already received quite a few. So I think at this point of the process, they're ready to move forward, and we'll probably get an update on the status of the application and whether or not we've been approved. So hopefully in the coming months, I will provide that as soon as I actually get an update from them. And that's the update for Finance Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz. Does anybody have any questions on Finance Committee?
I think Mr. Cruz should do it every time.
Yeah.
It's a lot better than I do.
Okay, at this point in the meeting, we could have, we're going to open the floor to public comments on agenda action items. So that's anything that is in the resolution packet that we will be voting on. So if anybody has a comment on action items, please come to the podium. If we're voting on something, if it's in the resolution packet, now's the time. If not, at the end, we have comments on anything. If it's in regard to what we're voting upon. You have the resolution packet, so. Yes, so there's nothing on the resolution that we're not going to have a conversation from the audience. So at the public comment portion, you could ask a question about the finance, because we're not voting on that tonight. We're not voting on that now. No. No comments on anything that we're voting on, resolutions. We are going to close the floor on that. And do we have any new or old business to discuss? Anybody? Yes. Yellow, yes, please.
So you've probably seen via your emails, our mental wellness festival. We're starting to promote for that. That's going to be on May 14th. Flyers have been sent out via email. If you scroll down in the flyer, there is a barcode if you're looking to volunteer for the fair, or if you have a company that would like to volunteer some things for the fair. Please just scan that barcode into your phone. A Google survey will be pulled up, and you can share how you want to support that event. It will be at the Civics Center over there in the center of town. We have guests. We have a motivational speaker who's going to be kicking it off. Our library will be involved. We will have food trucks, face painting, things for the kids to do. So, please try to come out and support our town. We're doing it in collaboration with Cedar Grove also. So will be present around the circle there from Cedar Grove and Verona, and also from other towns bordering us. It's done through Rutgers. It's our accumulating event of our speaker series. In addition, on April 21st, we will have our final speaker. That flyer will start also coming out. So that will come out in the beginning of April on who that will be. Thank you so much.
Dr. Moriello.
I just wanted to thank Mrs. Walker and Mrs. Frida for yet again an awesome kickoff to One Verona, One Book. We started reading it last night, and it's just so fun. It's so fun. So thank you to them for spearheading that every year.
Thank you. And if there's no other comments or discussion, we are going to go to a roll call to vote on the resolutions. And I need a motion to accept resolutions number 1 through 11.
So moved.
Moved by
Second.
Mr. Day. Second by Mrs. Drappi. And is there any discussion on any of the resolution items? No? No, Mr. Cruz, can you please do a roll call?
Sure. For the record, Mr. Walker is absent. Mr. Day,
Yes.
Mrs. Strappi,
Yes.
Mrs. Prisco,
Yes.
Mrs. Fresky.
Yes,
We have quorum. Motion passed.
thank you. And we do have addendum resolutions. So we are going to table addendum resolutions number 1 through 6. So I need a motion to accept addenda resolution.
Number 1, I think do we want to keep number 1?
Oh, I'm sorry. We're tabling 3 through 6.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Thank you. We're going to table 3 through 6. So I need an approval, a motion to approve addenda resolutions number 1, 2, 7, 8, and 9.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Drappi, second by Mr. Day. Are there any discussion on those? No. If not, Mr. Cruz, can you please call the roll?
For the record, again, Mr. Walker is absent. Mr. Day,
Yes.
Mrs. Drappi,
Yes.
Mrs. Prisco,
Yes.
Mrs. Fresky.
Yes.
We have quorum, motion passed.
Okay, thank you very much. And then at this point in the meeting, we are going to open to public comments, and public comments could be on any topic. And if you come to the podium, please state your name, your address, and there is a 3-minute limit. Thank you.
How are you? My name is Riza Trupak. I live on 7 Durrell Street, Verona. I'm just trying to find out some rules about bathroom privileges for the middle schoolers. I've had 3 incidents with my daughter being refused to use the bathroom. One was April 2021. It was addressed with Ms. McNeil and the teacher. Another one was in January of 2022, addressed with Ms. Warshaw. The third one was March 2022, addressed with Mr. Lancaster and Ms. Warshaw. So today the kids got a lecture in the class, took about 15 minutes, about now the teachers have to disrupt the class to fill out a form because kids have to use the bathroom. I don't think it probably would have come to this if they wouldn't be refused initially. I'm not sure why they're being refused. Let me see, I have notes all over. Apparently my child is not the only one who's been denied. There are a few teachers who, I guess, start off the class period saying kids are not allowed to leave for the bathroom during that class period. This is happening not during a testing period. This is happening during classwork. And on top of that, the way the teacher expressed it was very rude. Pretty much telling that the kids are big, that she doesn't have time to be dealing with this. And I need to find out more information about this form that they now need to fill out. Does my daughter have to put her business out there? Does, she have to say, hey, I have my cycle, I need to go to the bathroom? These 3 times I've had to call the office to allow my daughter to go to the bathroom, which is very upsetting because, Lancaster says, hey, they're not supposed to have their phones on them, but because she does have her phone or emails or whatever it is, she's getting in touch with me because she needs to go to the bathroom, plain and simple. She's not going over there to fool around. She has to go handle her business, come back to class. Till this day, I've never received an email of a complaint from a teacher saying, hey, your daughter's violating bathroom privileges. It's not happening. Cell phones, laptops, that's all my kids' personal property. It will not stay in the locker. With that, sorry. The schools are encouraging these kids to stay hydrated, drink water. So what happens when you drink a lot of water? Your bladder gets full at some point. So whatever the case is, what's going to be next? You can't drink water in class. You're going to take away the water fountains from the kids.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna just end. It's your 3 minutes. Dr. Fernari is taking notes and somebody will.
Okay,
get
yeah,
back to
which
you.
I did email her about it.
Okay.
And just for future, maybe we should get a timer. If you guys don't have one, I would definitely,
You know what,
buy
put it on
one.
so it's he'll put it on so it's
so it's visible for everyone.
audible, correct.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
Thanks.
How are you? Derek Chupak, 7 Durrell Street. I'm just gonna go over some of my daughter's grades. 82, 93, 84, 93, 100, 195. there's a student that has been doing good grades her whole career in the middle school. You know, if you ever see this, Daddy loves you, I'm proud of you. But it's a sad thing that she actually has to almost beg to go to the bathroom. And each situation that she had, because it's not even just that, rather than reprimanding the teacher for not looking after and making sure our kids are okay. I'm not sure if you guys have kids in the schools, but this is almost like child endangerment, borderline, not letting them go to the bathroom. That's not good for them. And every time there's a situation, rather than reprimand the teacher for doing it, they're coming up with some way to document what the kids are doing. For instance, now the kids have to sign something that they're going to the bathroom. So who's gonna look bad, the teacher or my daughter amongst the kids? You know, almost promoting bullying in a dry way. And the other situation was when the teacher came up to my daughter and said, pull your mask up. And then she walks away, and in the same room, she has her mask down talking to a teacher that's not even 6 foot away. And the teacher she's talking to is on the phone. And the reason why the teacher came to the table to begin with is because the kids were using their phone, not my daughter. My daughter just had her mask down, but she reprimanded my kid. So does the board look into that? Is that something that, because we went through the chain of command. We spoke to the guidance counselor. We spoke to the principal, Galberchak I spoke to, and it just seems like it's snowballing. Till what? Till the kids, the students are gonna look at my child and say, you're getting us in trouble. Now we gotta sign out every time we go to the bathroom, or we gotta keep our phones in our locker. Do you guys care about the kids? Did you get on the board to take care of the kids or to look after the teachers? Because I mentioned this the very first time I spoke. This was the first thing I spoke about at one of these meetings. And she's still having this issue. Is that?
Thank you, Mr. Chupak.
Yeah, I guess so. Is that my 3 minutes?
Mhm.
I hope you guys look into it.
I'm a fourth generation Verona resident, and I'm actually digressing from what I was coming up here. I am sorry to hear that. I don't have children in the district, but where's the humanity? Monica Vincent, 36 Montclair Avenue. I won't get into the backstory. Actually, maybe I will a little bit. Last year, my taxes were raised a little bit. I'm a single income homeowner, and I am passionate about education. So I started looking into the school district website, started really digging into seeing what was being purchased. This past January, I wrote an email to the superintendent as well as a couple of members of the board. And this is the email response that I got from the superintendent. Quote, "It is our belief, which is supported by research, that the balanced literacy approach alongside explicit phonics instructions helps students to develop a love of literacy, strong reading and writing skills, and independence." Now, in tonight's board meeting, they didn't call out that it was balanced literacy, but writer's workshop, all of that and so forth, that's balanced literacy. I don't know what research the district is looking at, but in recent years, many educators across the country are advocating for evidence-based programs that to support students that can't learn from balanced and whole literacy approach. At the February 8th board meeting, the curriculum team shared data go back to the recording, take a look at it. And they shared a couple of data points, science, math, and reading. And honestly, I wasn't surprised. The scores, they weren't as great. And they weren't because of the pandemic. They just weren't, they haven't been great in a couple of years. But in a slide labeled intervention strategy, the director of curriculum stated the district was going to have teachers attend a balanced literacy training. Why are we training teachers on a philosophical approach to reading that doesn't work? I recognize that New Jersey is behind other states that are introducing legislation around the science of reading. But why are you, I am, again, a single income homeowner, 4th generation Verona resident. And you guys are wasting my money on programs, and even take a look at your math program, Dimensions. Where is it rated on Ed Reports? You're failing our students with not high quality instructional materials. But the biggest surprise about that February 8th meeting was the 5 board members. You guys, with the exception of a clarifying comment from Mr. Waka,
Ms. Vincent.
not one of
Ms.
you.
Vincent, I'm sorry.
You guys have I have 3 minutes up here. You guys have
That
the,
was the 3 minutes.
You-
That was
yeah.
the 3 minutes. Thank you. You could. Thank you.
Good evening, Laura Morowitz, 38 Morningside Road. And I'm speaking as the mother of a student in the Verona school system, but also as the parent of 2 Verona alumni, one of whom now works in refugee services, another who teach English as a second language. I'm also a tenured professor for 23 years and the co-director of a Holocaust and Genocide Center. So needless to say, the issue of diversity comes up a lot at my table when I'm lucky enough to have my kids at home, which isn't that often. And I just wanted to support the board's decision, or to say that I urge the board to continue to retain the services of Great River Solutions for diversity. This is not, you know this better than I do, but all over the country, there are many groups that are using terms like critical race theory in order to really shut down honest discussions about race and diversity in schools. And I'm not really sure in many cases that people actually understand what critical race theory is, which is just an acknowledgement that this is a country in which we do have problems with racial equality. And we really can't have any diversity education at all until we start with that acknowledgement. I know one of the books that was mentioned as being problematic was Ta-Nehisi Coates' Between the World and Me, although the name was so mangled that I have to wonder if anybody in the group objecting to it had actually read it. But that's, I think, a good example of a book that is being sort of trotted out as somehow something that would be accusatory for our students, when in fact it's a really heartfelt plead. It's a book written by the author to his 15-year-old son, trying to help him understand and work through some of these issues. So I just wanted to encourage the board to continue to employ a group that is really trained and educated in how to do this. And although it may be difficult and it may be painful, diversity education is not just about, a conversation that everyone is necessarily 100% agreeing or comfortable with, but it's really about beginning with an acknowledgement that we have to take these issues seriously. And I do hope that we continue to use a group like Great River Solutions that has a lot of experience. And thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
George Kozachek, Verona, New Jersey. I have some paperwork here for Lisa. I didn't see. But I'd like to also know with Grand River, the Mrs. Shipper, I think you said her name was, is if you can send her name and information to me. You know, I really don't feel comfortable with the way that the vetting has been going on with the BOE and the committee. So we'd like to do our own vetting. So if you can send her information, I'd appreciate it. Also, you know, when projects fail, as this one has so much, I'm not saying that we shouldn't use the Grand River, but I don't know where they stand. They hired Tibisay Hernandez, and she just wasn't the right fit for us. But yet you're going to hire Grand River. I don't know if they're really fit for us. I checked them; they seem okay. I have to look and check and see if Mrs. Shipper has taken, you know, her has qualifications to run DEI here. That kind of information, that's what we keep on asking and looking for from you guys, but we seem to get none of it. I also want to say that when people make mistakes, you need to own up to it. Couple of issues that we have going on, you really should own up to those issues, the people on the board. I owe Frank an apology because I wrote him an email, and it was sort of planned. I sort of did like a survey thing on you, Frank. Sorry, I apologize. It seems that if I write a nice email, I get no answers. I write a scathing email, I got answers right away. So I don't know, you know, now that I blew it, I probably can't do that again. But thank you.
Thank you.
I'm a senior at Verona High School, and my name is Katula Tsadakos. Good evening, members of the board, faculty, and peers. I am here to ensure that students in the foreseeable future will receive support, guidance, and a comprehensive education that is currently lacking in the district and curriculum. Some say they're against spending tax-paying money recklessly, when it's truly the opposite. Knowledge and inclusion are investments that we should all invest in. Hiring a diversity consultant will ensure and enhance the education for students and the community of Verona as a whole. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Alba Killian, and I'm a senior at Verona High School. So I've come to understand that many students of color attending schools in Verona haven't felt like their safety is guaranteed here. And many people in the district haven't been properly educated on the many issues that students and staff face involving racism. And these issues are large and important enough that they should be addressed. If we truly want to create a space where everybody can receive an education without disturbances. Aggression and hatred should have no place in the school district, and I feel that as a Verona Board of Education, it would be greatly appreciated if you took the initiative to hire a DEI consultant. Hiring this consultant would bring us to closer to creating a safe environment for everybody, including minorities. And I hope to see that you make a decision that will come to be beneficial to us all. Thank you for listening.
Hi, good evening. My name is Lucia Killian, and I'm a freshman at Verona High School. As a student at Verona High School, I believe a DEI consultant would be hired in order to educate our students and staff on the topic of diversity and racism. This decision would greatly help create a difference in making sure Verona schools are a safe place for everybody. It is imperative that all students feel welcome in our schools in order to ensure everyone receives a fulfilled education. We hope that you follow through this decision to hire a consultant in order to create a better district for all. Thank you so much.
Good evening. I'm a sophomore at Verona High School. My name is Isabel Perez and I live at 78 Doral Street. I feel as though there are no cons as to hiring someone for the position. The first year returning to Verona High School after COVID, I was in an HIB investigation involving race. This wasn't the first time I had been in the HIB. There were multiple incidents prior. Since this investigation, I felt uncomfortable in my own skin. I constantly feel the negative looks I receive from my peers due to the fact that I reported this incident. If we as a district are to hire a DEI consultant, I feel as if the situations like mine will not be as frequent and harsh for upcoming students. The school will become a more diverse district, which will do nothing but make students of color feel more welcome. I truly hope that you all put into consideration what I just shared with you when it comes time to vote on this topic. I wish you all a great rest of your evening.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kozicek, you can't speak until everybody is done. Everybody gets one turn. When everybody's completed, you can come back to the podium. Thank you.
You did your
Again,
thing,
at the end, it's an aggregate. You concluded, you could come back at the end again. Thank you.
Good evening, board. My name is Nigel Wagesa and I reside at 19 Hillside Avenue in Verona. I'm currently a senior at Verona High School. After attending the school for the past 4 years and the incidents I have been involved in as a biracial student in Verona, I believe a DEI consultant is necessary in order for the district to become a more inclusive environment. From my perspective, there are no cons when it comes to hiring someone for this position, only significant pros. Some benefits that would come out of bringing a consultant into the district are increased exposure to diversity, which essentially helps students enter adulthood and thrive in the world. It allows students and staff to learn more about the community as a whole. It would create a safe space for minority students and staff in addition to so much more. I truly believe that hiring a consultant for this position would help so many students avoid the same problems that I have endured over the past several years at this school. After reading an article that was posted by Tap Into Verona/Cedar Grove, it was expressed, and I quote, "Hate and racism has no place in our country, and we at Verona pride ourselves as a tolerant and inclusive community. This district has always prided itself in high standards for all students. Many of our families are mixed race, and our students thrive here. They play together, study together, and work together," end quote. As a student of color in this school, I wholeheartedly disagree with that sentiment. If you recall, I attended a board meeting in October of 2021 where I spoke about my experiences with racism and HIB investigations as a person of color in Verona. If you further recall, the superintendent at the time publicly responded about the individual follow-up that would recur, and some of you as board members also responded. So what has happened in the past 6 months? I was a victim of 2 HIB investigations based on race, both of which were confirmed. I know that you are aware of these incidents as they need to be board approved. And in regard to the individual follow-up that I was promised, I'm still not clear when, where, or how that occurred. I spoke to you all in October about feeling invalidated. Well, I feel even more invalidated with the lack of response to my statements that night. So if you are wondering why this position is desperately needed, I guess that's your answer: oversight and accountability. If this role was brought into our district, students who come after me would not have to encounter the very uncomfortable and unfortunate experiences that I have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Sorry. Good evening. My name is Ashley Duhaney. I reside at 85 Mount Prospect Avenue, Verona, and I currently attend Verona High School as a senior. When my parents moved to New Jersey, they were searching for a home, a community, a place that showed promise. They had already had my 2 sisters who also went through the school system, and they needed to find a town that could prepare their children for the future. They could have moved to Montclair, Wayne, West Orange, or Livingston. However, they chose to reside here. They saw potential in Verona and what it could provide for their children. At the time, the school system was in poor shape, but over the years, the board has improved the system that molded my sisters and I and changed it into one of the best school systems in the state. Although the school system has proven itself successful, it still has its faults, like many systems. My own family and other families of color who have had children or have children in the school system have seen racial incidents been swept under the rug and forgotten time and again. A student calls another student a slur or utters a racist comment, and they are given a series of detentions or a suspension, or they're given an HIB. But there's a greater and less strenuous solution: education and representation. Children are told throughout their childhood that it's wrong to say racist comments, partake in racially charged incidents. Yet racism still finds a way to stay alive, and I know from firsthand experience about its liveliness. In our town and in my student body, there are people who have neglected to choose a more tolerant path in terms of behavior. The behavior of adults can't be changed, but children and young adults are still young enough and impressionable enough to be taught to change for the better. We can change the tide of racism in our own town if we properly educate our school system students and faculty with the help of a diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant. With the help of said consultant, the issue of inclusion in our teaching staff has the potential to shift. The material taught to our students may change, and our school system may be rid of xenophobia. There are students who don't know about historical events like the Tulsa Race Massacre or Emmett Till, or influential Black leaders like Sojourner Truth. There are students who believe that racism is not a problem in our country anymore, or that our town depicts a diverse and progressive society, even though there are a small population of minorities living here. Change needs to happen in Verona, and it starts with a DEI consultant. Thank you.
Very much.
Hello, my name is Nandy Webb, and I reside on Martin Road, and I'm currently a junior at Verona High School. I've been a student in Verona since kindergarten, and as a Black student in our predominantly white community, I always felt different from my peers because of our different skin colors and of the experiences that go along with it. As I continued my education onto the middle school, these differences widened between me and my classmates as we all began to form stronger opinions about our lives and surroundings. During my 4 years at HBW, there were many incidents with myself and many other Black students regarding race. One of the patterns that were frequent among these incidents was the administrators failing to handle these situations properly. This problem has only gotten more severe in the high school. The uncertainty and lack of expertise around handling these issues stem from a lack of people of color in the administration and a lack of knowledge on how to recognize and combat racism. Unfortunately, both of these factors have dampened on my high school experience that was supposed to be some of the best years of my life. A DEI consultant will help our teachers and other administrators to understand, identify, and embrace the differences in our classrooms, which will in turn benefit all students. Being able to properly and effectively deal with the racial issues in VHS with fairness and justice will also be able to increase the quality of education and culture for Black students. Your decision will affect my senior year at this school and other Black students growing up in the Verona school system. I hope you vote yes to benefit students like myself and the future POC students that will hopefully have a better, easier, and more comfortable experience at our schools. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'm Nicholas Canal, and I reside at 6 Roberts Court in Verona, New Jersey, and I am the junior class president of Verona High School. I feel that it is my job to voice the opinions of the students and represent them in matters that have such importance to our daily lives at this school. I've spoken to many of my classmates about the establishment of a DEI system in this school, and I've heard nothing but support. We are a community that strives to make all that go here feel safe and included, and many of my classmates, myself included, don't think that those goals can be achieved without better representation of different groups. I'm a queer student, and at times I can feel underrepresented in school, whether it is in or out of the classroom. That's part of the reason why I ran as school officer every year and will continue to do so in my senior year. I'm trying to represent myself and other LGBTQIA+ students in this school, and I feel that it is not really possible without the support from the district with this DEI program. I know and trust that this town and this school system would never put a price tag on the safety, comfort, and inclusivity of the student body, So I ask you to think of the students when making a decision next week. We deserve better. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi there. I'm Palma Qualiata. I live at 71 Newman Avenue. Two things I want to touch upon. The first being taxes. We moved here in 2005. My husband got a job in New York City. We were living in Massachusetts. So I come from Connecticut. So I searched and searched for the town, for the place to live that would be closest to New York, but the best school system I could afford. I had two little kids, 6 and 4. We moved to Verona. We moved to Verona because the school system, as far as I could tell, was excellent. And we paid twice as much taxes as we are paying in Massachusetts. And when we moved to Massachusetts, we paid twice as much taxes where we came from in California. And that's the way it goes. Depending upon where you want to live closest to New York, you're paying taxes. And if you want to live with a good school system, you're paying taxes. My boys are now in college. My eldest graduating is a senior at UMD, University of Maryland. I have no problem paying taxes for the school system or to continue to live in this town, okay? I'm leaving the school system. I want to leave the school system as good as I found it, and the reason I came to this town, okay? So these kids deserve a great school system, okay? So, and secondly, as I said, my oldest son is a senior at the University of Maryland. When he was a junior or senior in high school, he came home and he said, Mom, again, he went to Lanning and then he's been in the school system, Verona, the entire time. He went to Lanning and obviously HBW, and he said, Mom, at Lanning, at HBW, you think that you learn about Martin Luther King and you think that he took care of everything. That is done. And he said, and then you get to high school and you realize it's like so not done. He said, we were so not prepared. It's not taught in Lanning and HBW that it's still a huge problem. And so I say DEI needs to continue. We need to continue having programs. We need to continue to teach people that it is here. It is still here. Racism is still here in a big way. It's everywhere. And these kids know it. They know it. And we need to start teaching obviously, we need to start teaching even at Lanning, even at HBW, that everyone needs to keep their eyes wide open, not stuck in the sand somewhere. I thank you all for your work.
Thank you.
Hello, board. First, thank you for all the work you're doing in this community. I'm sorry, Mark Killian, father of 3 parents, 3 kids in the school district, 1 HBW and 2 here at the high school. Thank you for all the work you've been doing. This is a great school and a great district.
I'm sorry, just address as well.
Yes, 46 Marley. First, I want to commend these students here for coming up and speaking their mind and advocating for themselves and their fellow students. I've worked in business for quite some time in HR and DEIB, diversity, whether it's tech sales or any company, is incredibly important nowadays. Not for reasons that people think it used to be, but it's what makes great companies and great schools great, right? Where everyone feels welcome, represented, and the like, right? For sure. Really proud when I see the newsletter come out, the 1.5% that you keep touting that. You should be proud of that as well. But we've got to look beyond these percentages and these scores and really build an amazing inclusive environment so these kids could succeed in the very near future, because that's what really means success for these kids in their futures for sure. appreciate all the work you've done. Thanks for listening.
Much.
Hi, pardon me. Hi, my name's Risa Hotto. I'm a sophomore at VHS. I wasn't originally planning to speak tonight, but I just want to voice my support and commend all of the parents, parents, residents, students that have shared their perspectives and opinions and had my voice in support of the DEI program that's been put forth recently. I think that it's a worthy addition to the school system, and the board should seriously continue with their plans to implement this program. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Kristen Donahue, 31 South Prospect Street. I wanted to respond to a recent TAP article that was published on March 17th. In this article, the group Verona Watchdog is referenced several times. Curiously, there are no names attached to this group. I know that anytime I've supported an initiative, I've been proud to attach my name to any related article or letter. In my view, when you believe in something, you're willing to publicly stand behind it, regardless of consequences. Sadly, no one in this group felt confident enough in their position to do so. In the article, Verona Watchdog claims that Verona is, quote, tolerant and inclusive community. I believe this is true in many ways. However, if we are truly tolerant and inclusive, then why do we have so many students here claiming the opposite? If we are truly inclusive, why do we have parents of special education students asking for equity in programming? If we are truly inclusive, why do I have friends whose children have been harassed because of their ethnicity? I think I speak for everyone in this room when I say that we all love Verona. But when you love something, that love isn't blind. That love motivates us to do better. That love propels us to look critically and make sure that when we say inclusive, we mean inclusive. That love demands that we recognize that just because we haven't seen something doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Our town council's mission statement reads, Verona's vibrant community proudly welcomes all residents, business owners, employees, and visitors. Together, we are working toward being a truly inclusive place where our policies, services, and programs meet the needs of all people. The phrase that stands out to me in this statement is working toward. Working toward means that we're not quite there, but we care enough to try. Surely we too can work toward accomplishing similar goals in our school system. Our children deserve that. Verona deserves that. With that said, I fully support moving forward with the planned DEI initiatives in our district. I believe that hiring an outside body will only improve transparency and accountability with regard to DEI. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other people who have not spoken yet?
I just wanted to say, I wish I was as brave as you guys when I was your age, because I'm nervous getting up now and I'm way old. Okay, so I just wanted to say thank you. Gina Signorelli, 26 Valley View Road. 2 comments. Why do the teachers keep leaving for training and substitutes are coming in constantly? Kids need consistency, especially after everything they've been through. I have a daughter at FN Brown, and every single week it's the same thing. Mom, I have another substitute. So just a question about that. And second, about quarantining. A few concerns in regards to the continuation of quarantining. Parents should be able to make health decisions for their children. Who is deciding whether to continue any quarantine, whether it's travel or if they're exposed? There's more than enough data at this point to make an evidence-based recommendation. It seems as if decisions are being made based on personal feelings and politics. Though I'm a proponent of evidence, at least send a survey to parents to understand the people you represent and their opinions and thoughts on the subject. There are many school districts and counting that have already confirmed implementing quarantine is optional. Individual classroom quarantines have been implemented with insufficient evidence for their role in minimizing COVID-19 transmission and insufficient considerations of the harms to children. Research has proven that any decision to switch to online learning, even for short periods, carry social, educational, and mental health risks for children and their families.
Medical groups, including the American Academy of Pediatrics, have declared a national state of emergency with mental health. While I applaud Verona's school system with their efforts in mental illness, we still have room to improve by having these kids fully participate in schools and not worry about quarantining. I'm requesting to make quarantining optional with no stipulation period, regardless of vaccinated or unvaccinated. Children and adults should not be discriminated against or segregated based on masking preference, quarantine preference, or vaccination status. There should now be more of a choice regarding COVID protocol. Through transparency, collaboration, and communication, I hope to hear a resolution to this issue soon. Thank you.
Very much. Are there any other first-time speakers who wish to come to the podium? If not, Mr. Kozaczek. Thank you for being patient.
George Kozaczek, Verona, New Jersey. I just want to let everybody know that the board doesn't tell everybody what's going on. They are going with DEI. They just can't find the right person. They don't know how to find the right person. So far, they found 2 people and they weren't the good fit. So if people.
Mr. Kozaczek,
kids
I'm
in the
sorry. You're supposed to address the board.
Okay,
They'll be able to
so
hear
they
you.
can't seem to find a good fit amongst the consultants that give the presentations. So we don't want people who aren't a good fit. They are going with the DEI, and I can turn around and address them anyway. I'm addressing you, but I'm turning around and telling them. I don't have to face you. What are you kidding me? So they are going with DEI. They just don't know how to do it. And you're not going to be involved in it, as far as I know. It's really only going to be the administration that's really going to get the learning and the teaching. So any of the things that you have done and whatnot, this is what I'm getting from it. Anybody saying no, I'm not, who's saying no, but they don't answer questions now. They take it and they write you later. So if anybody wants to know the answers, you can get a hold of me and I'll give you the answers if they write them back to me. But that's what they're doing. They're doing the DEI. They just have to find a person that's a good fit. And they're having a large problem doing that because they don't know how to vet people, let alone that. You can see that with the teachers with inappropriate behavior and things of that nature that we have in school, right? We have more admins making tons of money than teachers, than they're putting the money towards the teachers, right? Go and look, if the kids want to go look at all the paperwork and do a study and see how much they hire in admins and all that money versus what they're hiring teachers. They should be giving the money to teachers and saying, here, go to school and learn this. And just to let you know, Mr. Rui Denocio, who went to Ramapo and had all this DEI stuff and this big thing, they took his mission statement out and they put DI, no more DEI. Okay, so that's coming about now too. They're taking the E out of DEI. So, thank you.
Thank you. Can you come to the podium, please? But sometimes spontaneous is okay. Thank you. Name,
Hi.
address. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Chris Barrows. I live at 219 Linden here in Verona. I just want to point out one thing because I had the experience of, and I have no problem stating this, when we initially had a call with what was really not the best choice, in my opinion, at the time for a person running some conversations that were interesting. They were informative in some ways, but they weren't the best choice at that time. But so many people are involved. And first and foremost, and I look at the public record on this. Lisa, you and I have not always agreed on things. So I don't just sit here and agree with the board all the time. But when that went out, a lot of people had the opportunity to be involved and people had a chance to be involved with that program and kind of get involved and learn a little bit about what it meant to be equitable and amongst other things. And I applaud that we're trying to go through in a better direction. But I want to just stress that I remember there was multiple groups, and I cannot speak for the board, but there was multiple groups. And we were trying at least to outreach to a lot of different groups. And whether it was done well or not, or perfect, I think lessons were learned, and that's clear. When our acting superintendent presented on this a few months back, she outlines it, I think, very well in the presentation. I forgot what month that was. You can correct me on that. You mentioned it earlier. But I just want to stress, these student voices are going to be heard. Because we've seen a distinct difference between that last time and now. I fully believe that. I wouldn't stand up here and say that if I didn't. I didn't want to talk tonight because, quite frankly, everything these students have said should speak volumes. I went to school. I will not speak about my personal situation. 3 members of this board did respond by email, and I went to near depression when I was in high school for many reasons. And if we had a DEI program at that time or a mental health program at that time, I wouldn't have tried, and I hate saying this publicly because it hurts me inside, but at that time, I wouldn't have tried to take my own life at 16. So these programs are going to save lives. So I apologize. I think you all know it, and I won't talk directly to them, but I hope you hear me. I do think you're going to take care of those students. So if that wasn't part of the plan, now you've heard it, you need to hear those students. So there you go. And thank you to these students, because what they did is one of the bravest things I've seen in the entire 3 years during a pandemic and all this stuff. So thank you, and thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Just for a clarifying point, if you do go back to my presentation that was given in December, and Mr. Barrows, you were absolutely right. Student voice was a prominent part of the puzzle that is part of this DEI work. We cannot do justice to our students without hearing from them. So whether that's through the data analysis that's being done or through the focus groups that are going on in schools, that you have organizations now that we didn't have many, many years ago when I was in school. And I applaud these students who came tonight. You are not only brave, but you are eloquent. And you should be proud of yourselves as we are of you. So thank you for speaking up. And, you know, anybody coming to the microphone, I am not even a comfortable public speaker. I said to somebody today in a training session, because I still go to professional development as well, I have always said I'll sing in front of thousands of people. I am nervous speaking in front of people. So I truly applaud the things that you were able to say this evening, and rest assured that your voices will be heard.
Dr. Pranari. Are there any other comments before we close public comment? No, come to the podium, please. This is going to be the last one. Our time for this is just ending.
Hi, good evening. I'm Corey Wagesa, 19 Hillside Avenue. Yes, I'm so proud of them, and I really, really, really hope that you take to heart what they are saying, because yes, it took strength, it took resilience, and I can tell you that one of the reasons that these students have the ability to do what they did tonight is because of some of the teachers that you have here. I've been disappointed by so many things in this district, and I've spoken with you about that with the last time that I was here. There are teachers in this building that I will forever be grateful for supporting my child, giving her a safe space, always having her back. And I'm sure that they have done it for countless others. So I just want to publicly acknowledge them and all they've done, because they are what has given part of the reason, what has given these kids the strength to do what they did tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hey, thank you, everybody, for speaking. And as Dr. Pranari stated, everybody's voices are absolutely heard. We are going to close public comments. And our next meeting, like I said earlier, we have a special meeting that's scheduled for Monday, the 28th, and that agenda and resolutions will be posted on Friday, this coming Friday as usual. And then the following regularly scheduled meeting would be Tuesday, April 5th. And I need a motion to adjourn. So moved by Mrs. Drappi.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Prisco. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And we are officially adjourning the meeting. It is 9:40.